Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. We are happy to have on not only my co-host and Hall of Famer, Steve Flink, but also one of the most genuinely nicest individuals I've come across in the tennis arena. She's covered the Australian Open, Roland Garros, Wimbledon, U.S. Open, ATP Finals, WTA Finals, Laver Cup, Fed Cup, Indian Wells, Miami, Cincinnati, Washington, D.C., Delray Beach, Houston, and Newport. Deep breath. And is written for such outlets as Tennis Magazine, Tennis.com, ESPNW.com, ATPTour.com, WTA and TennisNow.com. Please welcome back returning guest to the pod, Blair Henley. Blair, thank you for hanging out with us tonight.
Thanks for letting me, and thank you for that introduction, because I will tell you, yes, like the tennis stuff, that's what I strive for, and it's great when that stuff happens, but I don't think, this, not to start off on too cheesy of a note, but it doesn't mean a whole lot if you aren't making an impact and, having those nice relationships with people. So that means a ton to me. Thank you.
Well, thank you for again, your time tonight and talking tennis. I want to start, we're not too far from Newport. And Steve and I just had our recent segment, and he talked about his experience, not only this year, but especially kind of behind the scenes when he was inducted in 2017. I know you love that place. I want to hear your thoughts. You always tell me, David, you got to get down there. You got to get up there, actually, from Chicago. But before we even talk about that, there is some footage out there of you hitting on the grass courts, and Justine Hennon's one-handed backhand took it from the Blair Henley one-handed backhand. I mean, that one-hander is perfect.
Oh, man. Well, thank you. I'm assuming that came from Craig Shapiro, who was out with his cell phone recording. No, it was fun. I don't know if you guys get to hit on grass very often or have spent much time on grass. It's definitely a different experience. And quick side note, I don't want to segue for you, but the grass is all new in Newport. In between the last time they had the tournament there and this year, they resurfaced every single court. And when I tell you, it is like night and day, and you could see it in the quality of tennis. I hit on those grass courts probably 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, I like to say that, a decent player can play on anything. I struggled big time. So the new surface makes a massive difference. It was a lot of fun to hit on it. It's a little kinder on the body, which at this point in my life, I appreciate. And I can tell you that the players, like the real players, not this player, the real players appreciated the new surface. I mean, the reviews were glowing.
No, we heard about the new surface there. Again, you've said to me numerous times, David, you have to get up there. Steve obviously has special feelings towards that place, as obviously any tennis fan would. What are some of the things that really make you look forward to going back every year?
Well, I have to credit the staff there for hiring me when, I think maybe I had 2 tournaments under my belt. And they sort of took a chance on me and trusted me with these pillars of the game of tennis, because not only do I get to do a lot of the on-court hosting for the Hall of Fame Open, I will use this word, I've been blessed to be able to interact with the people being inducted, because so many of them are people that I used to read Steve Flink articles. I grew up watching these people on television. To be able to be in front of, a group of people asking Billie Jean King a question, it does not escape me what a privilege that is. So the fact that they took me on at the very beginning and trusted me with that, and it's sort of grown from there. I've also been able to do a series of, we would call them museum minutes. So it's like a 1-minute segment where we highlight kind of an unusual, maybe an artifact you might not see if you were going through. It's not one of the things that you're thinking, oh, wow, that's this huge thing up on the wall. So some of the things in the drawers that you might miss if you were going through the museum, that has been incredibly educational. To learn about the napkin, that was one of my favorite ones that I did. I don't know if I can tell you the backstory. It's the Arthur Ashe napkin. And it's in one of the drawers in the Hall of Fame. And it has all these signatures on it. And the story behind it is, I think he was at his 25th reunion, maybe high school reunion, and everyone wanted his autograph. And he said, I will only give you my autograph if you also give me your autograph. And so it's all the autographs. It gives me chills just saying it, all the autographs of his classmates. So it has been so educational, in addition to just sort of being there, and the place itself is amazing. But I have learned a lot in that role. And so I'm very thankful that they've allowed me to keep coming back.
Steve, did you know about the napkin story?
And not in the detail that Blair just described. It not at all surprising, given what the Arthur Ashe that I knew. And he's very humble, and he never liked to really call attention to himself, and that's the kind of thing that was very typical of Arthur. So a quick story, Blair, that you might enjoy related to that is a slightly different track, but 4 years ago when I did go in, they have that autograph session. I don't know if you're aware of that on the side. At least then they did. Maybe they've switched the day, but the day before we would all sit in the museum and sign these autographs.
Yes.
And it was a card. It's like an autograph card. Everybody signs it. And typical of Kim Clijsters, whom you've interviewed and you know, she said, well, if we're going to do this, I think we should all get a copy. In other words, those are given away to fans who come through the museum. She wanted one for her, one for Andy, one for me, one for Monique Kalkman. And that's exactly what happened. We got them and kept them, and I kind of treasure it.
That's so cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Leaving Newport, and for those who want to listen to more of it, the segment, check out the one that Steve and I did, because Steve kind of unveiled the curtain a little bit about what it's like being inducted, and it was pretty cool. Listen to that episode. So
David,
quick
other interjection too that I would like to commend Blair on is that what she didn't mention was, and I don't know whether you saw these, David, but on the Hall of Fame website when the pandemic was hitting big time, she did some nice interviews, very relaxed. And you had Stan, right? You had Kim Clijsters. You did a bunch of these that I thought were really nicely done, and you came across well, and they were relaxed with you. And I really enjoyed those interviews.
Oh, I absolutely saw those. She did some fun stuff with her good friend Nick McCarville. Blair was keeping us tennis fans plenty busy during the pandemic. So thank you for doing all that.
Thank you. No, I'm glad people enjoyed them. That was the whole idea. I know that I was missing tennis during that time, so I'm glad it was enjoyed.
I thought the timing was perfect. I was hoping they were going to keep going and you'd do it even more, but they were really welcome. Perfect timing.
Oh, well, thank you. That's great to hear from a Hall of Famer himself. Love it.
I want to transfer to another topic here, and it's more about Blair. We had a cover story on Tennis Magazine recently about a youngster that all of us Americans are so fired up about, and that is Sebastian Korda. He's the kid has already accomplished quite a bit for only being 21 years old. Round of 16 at 2 majors. Very close to making the quarters at Wimbledon. He was finalist in Delray, quarters in Miami with wins over Fabio Fognini and Diego Schwartzman. When you were doing your research and writing, what were some of the things that really stood out to you? And did you try to get the secret sauce from his parents to see they're doing something right with all those kids? It's unbelievable.
I asked for the secret sauce in essence, and because I will say one thing, I don't think going forward we're going to hear much from Peter. He really wants it to be Sebi's journey, and I have a lot of respect for that. I also understand why people want to talk to him, because it was, he's the one who sort of molded Sebi along with his wife, Regina, who actually did a lot of the heavy lifting, because when Sebi transitioned from hockey to tennis, Peter was on tour caddying for Jessica. Yep. So Regina did a lot of the foundational work, and sort of some of the hallmarks of his game. He says he tries to be as quiet as possible. That was one thing that she told him when she was, working with him on the court, which I thought was interesting, because I think a lot of times you hear coaches say, I want to hear your feet. I want to hear your feet moving. And she was saying the exact opposite. Like, I don't want to hear your feet. I want you to be so light on your toes that you don't even see what's happening. The opponent can't even see what you're doing or hear what you're doing on the other side of the net. There was no concern with what people thought. which I find to be in a lot of exceptional athletes, a key piece of the process. Peter will say, he won't go into some details. I asked him, I was like, if there's a weakness, if there's something that needs to be worked on beyond, if you're looking at him, you can say, okay, well, maybe the serve could add some miles per hour, a little more consistency, things like that. But he said, his quote was, if you go to a Michelin star restaurant, the chef, and you ask to see the chef after a great meal, the chef is going to come out and say, thank you very much, but he's not going to tell you how he made it. And that is what he said to me when I tried to get some more details about mechanically or long-term, what are we looking at? What is going to be the secret to going from where he is right now to where he wants to be, which I think he's capable of being the very best. So again, I was jumping around a little bit there, but he said along the way, people thought he was bananas. He used the word crazy, bonkers, bananas, whatever you want to say. People were thinking, like, why are you doing it this way? Because Sebi got a late start. He wasn't, I think he was 10 when he first started to really play. I mean, he had, batted balls around on the court, but it wasn't until he was 10 until he spent a ton of time on the court. But they wouldn't let him spend a ton of time on the court. So he was on the court daily, but it was maybe an hour at a time. And I asked Peter, I was like, so like, how long did you limit it to an hour? And he was like, oh, like through when he finished juniors.
It's like, interesting because I think they live right near IMG, but he's not an IMG Academy kid.
Correct. And an interesting note on that, Peter made him grow up playing on, not made him, I shouldn't say that. Sebi obviously wanted this badly, but played on clay court. They had a clay court near their house, and that is where he learned how to play. And it was interesting. I was thinking about Sebi actually when I was reading as Hubert Hurkacz was making his run at Wimbledon, and I was reading his ATP bio, and he also grew up playing on clay, and said as a result, he has the endurance, he can battle it out from the baseline, but he also learned how to have the variety. So I think that was a really smart thing on the Korda's behalf. And it was also because they wanted to protect his body. So again, I feel like I don't want to go take too much of your time on this, but I found the whole development process of his to be the opposite of mainstream. It was just very unique and unusual, but everything had a reason. The clay court was to develop his game in different ways that you don't always see in American players, and also to protect his body, which, listen, that can be just as big of a problem as a technical issue on your forehand. So it all sort of makes sense in the end, but Peter will be the first to say that, people thought I was crazy. So I guess all's well that ends well.
Yeah. And Steve, you've said this before. I mean, barring any unforeseen injury, I mean, this kid's top 10 material in your eyes, 100%. Right?
Oh, definitely. But Blair alluding to injuries, I'm a little concerned. There's a few niggling ones this year, and that cost him any chance to do anything at the French after winning the tournament the week before. I thought that was too bad. However, he's so impressive. He's so well-rounded. Mm-hmm. And the forehand can go off a little bit here and there, but mechanically, he's so sound. And I think Blair's right. The serve could get bigger, but I'm very encouraged. I like the attitude. Yeah. And so different, Blair. I don't know how much you saw of his dad, but I watched a lot of Peter Korda, and I saw him play some really fantastic matches against Pete Sampras in the 90s, particularly in 1997 when Pete beat Korda. Pete Sampras beat Peter Korda at Wimbledon in 5 sets on his way to the title. And then Korda beat Sampras at the US Open in 5 sets. And then they had another great match toward the end of the year. It was a really interesting matchup. And he was so different from his son, so flashy, so unpredictable. And he did his wild scissors kicks. And that's what I find so interesting about the kid, is that obviously his dad is very influential, but he's a different personality altogether.
It's Regina, that she is kind of the silent, stealthy one from what I understand. And I think that's, yeah.
The wild card here, and everyone is interested, and everyone asks Sebi in any press conference they have is, he has two other people in his corner that are pretty widely known, and their name is Steffi and Andre. Did you get any insight on what those two are doing? I know he says Andre talks to him pretty much before every match, and they game plan.
Yes. I asked a lot of questions on this topic to try to dig a little deeper. I didn't get very deep on this particular thing, and I appreciate that there are certain things you sort of want to keep for yourself. But the biggest thing, again, after my multiple questions that I got out of his relationship with Steffi and Andre, is the belief that Andre was able to give him, and the trust in himself, and the building his confidence in the sense that, yes, he can achieve all these things that he wants to achieve. So that is sort of the big picture concept. I wasn't able to get down to the little picture, though I tried. But again, I appreciate that there is an element of privacy. Even like if you listen to his post-match interviews, it almost can come off a little bit short or aloof. And I will say that it's not.
I've been in those in Delray, and so I mean, it's not at all.
Right. But I do think he maybe chests, as my great Aunt Ellen used to say, he chests his cards a bit. And so, which I don't think is a bad thing. And I think that's part of the reason why when we see him on the court, he sort of looks like he's done it before, which in particular with young American guys, I feel like sometimes, which Flash is fine. Like we like Flash too, but it's nice to see someone who's like, oh, wow, he's doing all these things for the first time. And he looks like he's an old pro.
Well, the other thing that I just want a quick comment, David, is that, you know, the loss to Khachanov at Wimbledon, which was a heartbreaker, and the 13 service breaks in the fifth set, he didn't come off. It's his birthday. He could have been feeling sorry for himself. He had a great attitude that was obviously genuine about the loss, and he knew he'd still had a really good Wimbledon and was that close to getting into the quarters. And he's remarkably mature, Blair, don't you think?
Yes. And there is, and he has said along the line, there have been times where he's questioned his mom and dad and their decisions on you know which way they pointed him in terms of his upbringing and development. So he has said that, as has Peter. It's like, you know, yes, there were times where he was like, I don't know that this is what I should be doing, but I feel like everybody ends up on the same page, and so there is support in the journey, and he sort of accepts that each one of these stops is just a stop on the journey, and he sort of digests it and moves on, which that part is sure mature. I don't know that I do that very well in my life. So I have a lot of respect for him.
The three things I always say about cool, calm, and collective. It's just how he carries himself. For those that haven't seen the article, it's on tennis.com or get the Tennis Magazine. It's a great article. Great job as always, Blair. I want to jump around to some other topics. You can kind of say quick hitters, maybe medium hitters, maybe, but there's a few things I want to hit. So I'll referee if I need to in between if we get too long on any one. But we're recording this during the Olympics, and I wanted to hear both of your thoughts. I'll start with you, Steve. Just your general thoughts on tennis in the Olympics. Obviously, it was great, Naomi, with the opening ceremony. She actually lost yesterday, the day prior to when we're recording this. To me, don't get me wrong, I love tennis. I love watching it. I am watching it. It's just kind of weird. Same thing with golf, like being an Olympic sport. I just was curious about both of your views on it. And Steve, I'll go with you first.
The tennis in the Olympics and where it fits, you mean? Well, I know that some people think it should be more team shaped, team devised. I don't know how. I don't mind the way they're doing it. I mean, you got your singles, doubles, and mixed, and you can play as much as you want. And I think the sad part this time is obviously the no crowds. You know, we started to get a little spoiled, and we saw the Wimbledon full at the end for the finals, and this has been tough on the players, I think, dealing with that. Who's to know whether we've had as many upsets among the women? If the crowds had been there, perhaps they could have pulled a few of the favorites through. But I've just been happy to get this full coverage on one of those NBC stations and see wall to wall. And what I don't watch live later tonight. As soon as I get up in the morning, I catch the rest, and I like the thoroughness of the coverage, and I like the spirit of the players. And Swiatek, I think that said it all. Her, breaking into tears after her loss. It was very moving, and it showed you how much it means to them. So I've been pleased to see how it's all evolved. I mean, it's too bad if, understandable why Rafa didn't want to go over, and certainly Roger's not at this point. He's got to see if he's even going to be able to play the U.S. Open and get some preparation in. So that was bad luck in a way, but otherwise the fields are strong, and I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think let me just clarify my thoughts. It's because, with tennis, they play each other every week, right? And there's country to country type competition in Davis Cup and Fed Cup. Golf,
Right.
Similar thing, right? They play each other every week. So that was kind of just my clarification on it. It's really like another tournament. Obviously, it means more to the players. You're representing their country, but we already have that in certain competitions. Blair, I'll let you.
That's Blair, you follow me, but I get your point, David, and I know there are a lot of people. And initially, I like that whole idea, and you could get some really exciting doubles and mixed doubles that you would never see anywhere else. However, I get the feeling that the players like it the way it is. I don't hear a great outcry for the other, but I as a fan, journalist / fan, I get your point.
I love it. Sign me up. I think, and maybe this is because I work in tennis, but I do think sometimes there's a rinse repeat sense from week to week on tour. And even without the fans, just as you were saying, Steve, there's a different feel. You have, Max Purcell being thrown in there at the last minute and upsetting Felix Auger-Aliassime, or Sumit Nagal winning the first singles Olympic match for an Indian player in like 25 years. On the women's side, Marketa Vondrousova taking out Naomi Osaka. There is an unpredictability to me, which is saying something, because in particular on the women's side, unpredictability sort of reigns right now. There is an unpredictability in Olympic tennis with all the extra added things thrown in. And there's also, to me, added interest off the court because of all those emotional things that we were talking about. Even, watching Garbine Muguruza so torn up because she couldn't help Carla Suarez Navarro to one more Olympic win, and seeing Carla talk about it and their friendship. They're not really things we're getting on a week in and week out basis. And I just feel like it adds a level of interest and intrigue that is so cool, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, all totally valid. I would say I wish we didn't have quite so much unpredictability among the women. I've been feeling this way for quite some time. Upsets are nice up to a point, but I was sorry to see like Ash Barty. She didn't have that spark and spirit that we know is within her, and it was just too soon after Wimbledon. So I don't like this. And Naomi was terrific for 2 rounds, and then it caught up to her that she hadn't played, played so little since the French. So some of that I just would like to see a few less. The men obviously have been so far more predictable, and I like that, because then you get the matchups later on that you were hoping for.
Very true. I will say though, with the singles players who maybe have a tough loss early on, the doubles and mixed doubles. I mean, I will, preach from the doubles pulpit all day long. Like I feel like it has such value in particular on site at an event. I think it's such a nice, fans who might not have any idea that doubles would be fun to watch, can go and see maybe one of the best matches of the tournament. But I think having the added weight on doubles with these players who, like, if it doesn't go well in singles, let's see if we can get a medal in doubles. And I feel like it puts a little added oomph into the doubles, both mixed and regular as well, which I love.
100%. Totally agree with you on that point. All right, next one real quick. We'll start with Blair, because Steve has already answered this, but we'll give Steve a chance to hedge if he wants to change. Blair Henley, Roger Federer. Do we see him at Wimbledon in singles in 2022?
Okay. I am going to hedge a little bit on this. I think it depends how the rest of this year goes. And I think if the rest of the year goes how the initial part of his comeback has gone, I think the answer is no. So I feel like I'm cheating a little bit.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
yeah,
Steve,
that's
your
what I
answer at all, or
You're not cheating, you're just being honest. No, I agree with that. I believe that my fear is that it just keeps happening all year long, stopping, starting, knee bothering him again. None of us knew at all because he's so good at hiding it that the knee was bothering him during the grass court season. I mean, yes, he had a bad match against Felix and Halle and wasn't happy with it, but he didn't talk about the knee. He talked about his attitude. And then we saw him get out of the Manarino match somewhat fortunately in the first round and start to play decently up until he lost to Hurkacz. So I just feel like that was this bad sign that it happened again. And then the question is, it goes on to the hard courts. Wouldn't the knee perhaps be more vulnerable than ever on the hard courts? So yeah, I lean toward the fact that we probably won't see him next year, based on the fact that I don't see evidence that that knee is going to consistently hold up now, even after the 2 surgeries in 2020, sadly. But on the other hand, what a career.
yeah, we shall see.
Yeah.
We shall see. I'll stay with Blair on this one. Your favorite, you've covered so many events. I'm curious, your favorite tournament to cover. Steve, we've done this with Steve a little bit before, when we had Mary Carrillo on, and they both said Wimbledon. And then they also had a soft spot for the Australian Open too. They both mentioned Australia as well. Curious to hear your thoughts on your favorite tournament to cover.
I promise the Newport Tourism Board has not paid me prior to my appearance here. I love Newport. I really do. Are you going to get the same caliber player there that you're going to get at a slam? No, but the full experience, I mean, what else can you ask for? And the fact that there is, I mean, from the working perspective, there are no night matches, which gives you a little bit more chance to sort of absorb where you are. This is from somebody working the event. Thanks to that dew on the grass, I don't have to be up till midnight every night, which is nice. But just the added, element of the induction, it's just the best. Your answer
doesn't surprise me, in the fact that the very first time you and I met, you've stressed that how much you love that event. It's not shocking to me.
And side note, caveat, I will say, I shouldn't say that you're not going to get the caliber of player there that you would get at a Grand Slam. That is not true across the board. Obviously, in terms of the scale of the draw, it's going to look a little bit different. I think that's fair to say. Kevin Anderson, listen, couldn't have asked for a better winner there this year. So great for him. But yes, love it. I would also say I've only done one Laver Cup. And I know that doesn't really count.
Chicago.
But it was one of the most electric, maybe the most electric tennis atmosphere I have ever witnessed in my life. And I have been privileged to witness some pretty electric atmospheres.
You're talking to the one in Chicago, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Steve, we and Blair and I had talked about this on a previous pod. Chicago's such a professional sports oriented city. There's not a lot of colleges that are located in the city. We have 2 baseball teams, we got a hockey team, NBA team, all professional sports. I was wondering how Chicago would, hold up with a professional tennis event like that. It was unbelievable. And the fact that Kevin Anderson played a pivotal role in that weekend, and he went to University of Illinois. He had a lot of fans there, but the United Center was packed every session, and it was so much energy. So impressed with Chicago.
No, I think a lot of it, the spirit among the players is there. They enjoy it. The format really works. And I think that's why one of the main reasons, Blair, you would call it electric, is that it really moves. I know the other person that shares your view 101% is Gigi Fernandez, who's taken some of her groups there. And she says she normally cannot sit and watch tennis for a long time. She never stops watching when she goes to Laver Cup. So I hear you. Only thing I don't like is that we have this kind of confusion with these team events in the sport right now. And Davis Cup has been harmed. And I don't think that was at all the intention of Roger Federer or Tony Godsick, his agent. And I think they're trying to add something great for the game. And look, it's going to be in Boston this year. What you're talking about with Chicago, I think will be replicated in Boston. I have no doubt about it. But I wish that we didn't have these 3 events of the ATP Team Cup and then Davis Cup and Laver Cup. I think it's hard for the public to sort it all out and understand what it all means. But there's no doubt bringing it back to these communities, like bringing big time tennis back to Chicago and now back to Boston, which they have such rich histories, particularly Boston, I think is wonderful.
Particularly Boston. Come on.
Yeah.
The next one I want, and I'll start with Steve on this. You know, we're in the middle of the Olympics and we have one slam left. I have to ask it. Prediction time. Does Novak get it done? Does he win the Olympic gold, and does he win New York?
Who
start with you, Steve. You go first.
Well, I think whether he wins the gold or not, he wins the US Open. That's my sense. And I think there's a very good chance that he gets the gold because he seems to have a clear path to the semis. Then it's possible he plays Zverev, who so far has looked very sharp in the first couple of rounds. And Zverev is capable at his very best of threatening Novak. And then the final would be either Medvedev or perhaps Tsitsipas. So I think that Novak is so confident right now. But on the other hand, it's best of three. So there's a slightly better chance for an upset because of the format. But either way, I think he's going to come to New York really driven and purposeful and determined to get it done there, knowing that nobody could. Golden Slam is one thing, but a Grand Slam is still great. And it still hasn't been done by a man since Laver in '69. So I do predict that he will win in New York. And I'm pretty sure he's going to win this gold as well. What do you think, Blair?
I think he has a better chance of winning the calendar Grand Slam than he does of winning the Golden Slam. If that, yeah, I guess that makes sense. So I'm sorry.
I'm saying then we seem to be on the same page.
Yes, I think the 2 out of 3 sets is a potential game changer. We saw it, twice at Roland Garros where he was down 2 sets to love. Yeah. Also, Novak, from people that I've spoken to, from my observations, he is, and I mean this in like the greatest sense of the word, he's a control freak. And I think that, and you have to be that good at whatever you do. You have to, and in particular in tennis, which is a very, it's an individual sport. It's a selfish sport, if you will. I think he has less control in a COVID Olympics. He, I believe, wasn't able to bring his stringer, which was a point of contention early on. I don't know if he's able to eat exactly how he likes to eat there. These are little things, but we have seen when it looks like Novak is the sure thing. And I go back to 2016 when I, and obviously there was injury involved there too, but when things sort of get topsy-turvy for him mentally, we've seen it unravel. And so I do think there is a possibility of that. I think there is more of a possibility of that in the Tokyo atmosphere in 2 out of 3 set match.
Yeah, no, fair point. I will only add to that on the positive end that, his record in Masters 1000s of having won them all at least twice, he's shown what he can do in best of 3. He tends to sort of zero in even more on that opening set. So he knows what he's dealing with, but it'll be fascinating to see. And he certainly, I think again, a saving grace in Tokyo might be that the no crowds oddly could work for him because the crowds tend to root against him. They want the upset. They've never fully appreciated Novak, in my view, and anywhere in the world. So oddly, I could see that, and he did a good job with that in the Cincinnati and New York last year when there were no crowds. So we'll see, Blair. I think you can make that case either way. I do agree with you on that.
Can I ask a follow-up on this, Steve? Do you think the fact that, by all accounts, Novak is the king of the Olympic Village, there are no fans that could potentially root against him? Also, somebody pointed out, and I'm forgetting, somebody on Twitter, when he gets to the US Open, whether or not he has the gold medal, there's going to be history on the line. And will people then be cheering for that? And will that be such a reversal from what he is used to that it could potentially throw him off?
The reverse psychology. I like that.
Well, you know what? I think that's a problem he'd like to have, Blair.
Fair.
I don't think there'll be that much of that because for some reason, you've witnessed it, both of you. And the fact is that Roger and Rafa the Roger fans are okay with Rafa and vice versa, but for some reason Novak had not afforded the same type of shall we say affection from the fans. And so there could be a small degree of what you're describing in New York. I wouldn't think it's be that prevalent.
I would agree. Those are great responses. I asked one of my friends from his name's Scott. He's from the Payers and Players podcast. And he said that he's in agreement with you guys. He says, if he's going to lose one, it's going to be the Olympics. He said basically the same thing. It's 2 out of 3 sets. It's more of a sprint than a marathon. And, you know, like Blair said, he was down 2 sets to love twice in the French Open. So we
but
shall
of course,
see.
Wimbledon was a little different. Wimbledon was a little smoother passage, lost his first set of the tournament in the first round, and then one more in the final, and otherwise he rolled through it. And I also get the feeling back on the hard course, particularly in New York, that's where he could peak. And he's had this strange, you're aware of this, Blair, but I mean, 8 finals in New York, 3 wins. So that's for Novak is not up to his standard. It's very surprising historically that he hasn't won more US Opens given his 9 Australian and always coming through there. And partly it's the heat in New York versus playing at night a lot in Australia. But somehow I feel like he's going to really peak in New York. We're going to see the best of the best from Novak in New York.
My last question, I said, if you had to put a number on it, we'll end with this. If you know, we got 3 guys at 20, if you had to put a number on it, all said and done, what are we looking at the final total for whoever is the most? People think obviously Novak is the favorite. He's younger. Is 25? Is that too aggressive of a number? I'll let Blair start.
No. In short, I think that there might also, assuming Serena does not get to 24, I feel like 24 might be a number that Djokovic has in the back of his mind. Who knows? But I do know that, and I tweeted about this, I do think he has a genuine soft spot for his country, as we all do to some extent. But I think that there is maybe more of it coming from that Balkan part of the world that has gone through a whole lot. He has really done a lot, I feel like, for raising the profile of Serbian tennis. And I think he takes that responsibility seriously. And I do think that's part of the reason why he's at the Olympics. But let's be honest, the dude wants every record, every title. He wants, those things matter to him. I mean, I feel like you can have Rafa being like, you know, it's so, I just love it. I just want to compete my hardest every day, or some version of that. There is no doubt where Djokovic stands in terms of his chase to be the best, without argument.
Steve and Mary have echoed that thought exactly, right, Steve? You and Mary both said the same exact thing. It just means more. So
it means
records mean them.
Funny because Rafa shies away from trying to talk about it, and that's just his nature. He takes pressure off himself. I understand that. Novak just puts himself on the line. He's very honest about what he wants to achieve. The next 2 years are going to be critical. The other important factor, David, I think, is that if he does win the Slam, regardless, either Slam, the Grand Slam or the Golden Slam, there could be a slight letdown at the start of next year. He's worked so hard to achieve this. It's such a monumental accomplishment if he pulls it off, either one. So it's possible there could be a slight letdown, but that might only cost him a 10th Australian. Then he might run off 3 more in a row next year. So I do think 24, 25 is very realistic, and that he's going to really go at it full force through next year and the year after and see where he stands then.
Crazy.
And he's going to want to be a comfortable distance from Rafa, because Rafa could win another French or 2. It's not beyond the realm. So right. Novak's aware of that Rafa's always so dangerous at Roland Garros, despite the fact that Novak toppled him this year. So he's going to also want to make sure he's got his distance from Rafa. I have no doubt that's calculated in his mind.
Oh, so great to see. So we're so lucky to see this. And like you said, win or lose the Olympic gold medal, he's still got New York, and there's going to be all eyes on Novak and all eyes on history. I want to thank both of you guys for taking time tonight and talking about this tennis. Steve, you know, on a personal note, Steve, you know how much I enjoy you joining me on these, and we've had a blast, you and me, and then obviously bringing on third person such as Blair. And Blair, I think the first time I met you was in Delray, I think in 2017. We did, I think, a Facebook Live with Jack Sock, I think was the first, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And you were always very nice to me, and you didn't have to be. And you guys both have just fueled the passion that I have for this sport. And I appreciate you guys both supporting me and taking time and joining me on doing stuff like this.
Great to be on, David. I just want to say, I do think you and I held serve. We did all right tonight, but we were outclassed.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
She added a ton to this podcast, but seriously, Blair, it was great fun having you on and hearing your views on the game. And I look forward to crossing paths with you sometime in the future. It's great fun.
I cannot wait. And Steve, next time I'm putting on my blazer for you.
Yeah.
Good. I love it.
Thanks so much. Well, and Blair, hopefully I'll see you in a couple of weeks, because hopefully we'll be in Cincinnati in a couple of weeks.
Yes, Lord willing, nothing changes between now and then. Hopefully I will.
Lord willing, nothing changes. Then obviously my favorite tournament, especially leaving Chicago in February, Delray Beach.
There you go. And David, by the way, thank you for all the kind words. It's a pleasure. There have been a lot of people who have done the same for me when I had no idea at the very beginning. Not to say that was ever you. That was definitely me at the beginning. I had no clue what I was doing. And there were so many kind people in tennis who showed me the ropes along the way. And so I definitely try to pay it forward if I can.
No, I appreciate you both so much. Thank you guys, and look forward to talking to both of you soon.
Thank you, David.